The ESPN report was, a sensationalistic report taking in all kinds of cases, not only that were similar to Ray Rice, would be domestic violence and violent assault domestic violence case, and they brought in every single other, violent crime, which, if you think about it, is not fair on any level, and not to defend prosecutors, but the bottom line is in New Jersey, if you're a first-time offender in a domestic violence case, in 99% of the cases, I'll use ESPN's, you're not going to jail. I'm not saying that's right. It's just a fact.
Well, I think a lot of people, too, it depends on how you base that off of, because what he was actually, the grand jury came down with was it was a third-degree felony aggravated assault. So,
correct.
And I hear what you're saying.
And then, as a person who lives in New Jersey, I can tell you the law itself is kind of goofy in the fact that both Ray Rice and Janae Rice were originally charged as assaultants, as they call it, and that happens in every domestic violence case.
Where they're each,
if you hit each other, you're immediately charged with domestic assault, both sides. So there's a lot of issues with the actual law itself, but as far as what the prosecutor could have accomplished, I think people are being very, very unfair to them.
I definitely want to make sure we talked about that because we had kind of mentioned it last week there. And obviously all of this is a bigger spotlight all week on the NFL as it continued on. Greg Hardy. And, I talked a little bit later in the week last week about that whole convoluted legal system down there where basically the first go-around was like a dry run for the defense because they didn't like the results of the judge trial, so now they get to do it again in front of a jury. But, to me, I think there's a murky line, which is why I understand part of the deactivation thing down there is technically, even though by the law now it starts all over again, he's already been convicted once, so there's kind of a murky line for how you judge that there, because do you look at it as a judge already found him guilty, or do you look at it as it starts all over again?
Well, and this is another thing I pointed out. I said, and I've seen it all over Twitter today, and I, the term now being coined with NFL teams is, hiding behind due process. And behind due process is only a thing because of Roger Goodell's lack of consistency in personal conduct issues over the past months and years. Due process is a pretty important part of our society, and in every other aspect of society, we champion due process. And the fact that we all want it, if God forbid any of us get in trouble.
Absolutely.
So the fact that NFL teams use it or hide behind, you want to use. Again, the aspect of it goes directly back to Park Avenue because you should wait to play itself out. That's just the nature supposed to be. And I understand other people will be, if you were in trouble, we might be fired immediately. They're 100% right. But there's a difference. I am at my job, and it is a good job. There are other people that can do our jobs.
Absolutely.
Maybe not as well. I would like to think maybe not as well, but other people would think differently. However, there are other people. There aren't too many people in this world that can run the football like Ray Rice, never mind Adrian Peterson. That's just the reality. There aren't many people in this world that can rush the passer like Greg Hardy. So are they going to be giving preferential circumstances in issues like this? Yes. But that's just realism. That's just reality. And yelling at people for hiding behind due process, as I said, whatever you want to call it, is really unfair at certainly at times.
Do you think do you think he maintained or they maintained the deactivation, or how do you see that playing out there with Hardy? I know we're going to talk about Peterson here in a second, but do you think he remains out for the time being?
It remains to be seen. I mean, if you would have told me, I was on the radio on a different show today, and I'm stunned that the Vikings are going to let Adrian Peterson back and play this weekend.
I was going to ask you about that.
So I'm never going to say never. I mean, to me, the Carolina Panthers were moving forward, and they were going to let Greg Hardy play on Sunday until the Vikings deactivated Peterson, and that made them look so bad. Then they acted.
Then the word,
there's no question about it.
I'm sure you heard on
so
Friday,
now
they were talking about there was word they may cut Greg Hardy heading into the weekend before that got calmed down a little bit.
And they're letting Peterson.
Yeah.
It's a reaction to a mob mentality, and there was, you can either stand up to it or you can not. Is basically what it comes down to, and no one would have criticized. People would have lauded the Carolina. People would have lauded the Vikings for cutting Adrian Peterson. It's as simple as that. They're pariahs now, and public relations wise, it would be a hit for the organizations. It's very difficult to cut players who are that good, though. It's easy to say it. As soon as things die down, somebody else is going to sign them. It's not going to be the end of their NFL career, that's for darn sure. So I'm not sure it's fair to ask either organization to just cut a player. We've seen it, I advocated Cleveland should move on from Josh Gordon in the past. Yeah. In that education, I was for his own good. Each, and that's another aspect of this. I think people kind of gloss over it. All of these issues are different, and you have to look at them, the prison by themselves. You can't say, oh, well, the Ravens released Ray Rice, so the Panthers should release Greg Hardy. The Vikings deactivated, Adrian Peterson, so the 49ers should have deactivated Ray McDonald. They're all different. They're all at different places as far as the legal process goes, and all the teams are in bad positions. But I'll say it again, the lack of credibility to the league all harkens back to Roger Goodell, and that's why when people use the due process argument like the Vikings did today, like the 49ers have done with McDonald and the Panthers have done in the past with Hardy, people snicker and laugh at them because there is no credibility in the league, because there is no credibility to the commissioner of this league.
I agree. John McMullen from the Sports Network on the Sports Fix. We're talking some NFL. You brought up Peterson there, and yeah, the news as we're speaking, it rolled out that, and I was as surprised as you were that quickly the Vikings have decided we're going to reactivate Peterson. He's going to play this weekend. For those of you that don't know, he was charged over the weekend what is the actual charge that he's been charged with? He used a switch on his child and apparently, according to the details, went overboard. And I was reading some of them, and I mean, this is such this one's a different kind of a slope, because there's a lot of people that, and I believe in it, the right to discipline your kids. And hey, I spank my kids. We have a paddle. I'm going to be the first one to tell you that. Hey,
don't say that on the air.
You got to do what you got to do, man. And if anybody's got a problem with that, then they can come and discuss it with me. But my kids are well behaved and mannered, and I'm proud of my kids. So they don't have to get. Let me just put it that way. I don't have to use it. But anyways, point being is, I believe in your right to discipline appropriately your children as need be. I mean, I will be the first one to tell you that my dad had one belt that I didn't like very much, because that was one that you met when you had a bad day, and when he had to deal with it, he had to deal with it. But it's how I became what I am. Regardless, though, that's different. I'm hearing some of the details here, and obviously this is something that people feel went above and beyond board of just disciplining your children.
Yeah, and, everybody deserves their opinion, and I'm not going to argue with those people. I wrote about this in my column on Sunday. And I will say there's a lot more shades of gray in this one. This is not nearly as slam dunk as people are making it out to be. And I encourage people to go read it. But there are plenty of people, particularly, Southerners, who believe that using a switch to discipline their children is not only acceptable, it's commonplace. Charles Barkley was on yesterday saying if you put everybody in jail in the South who used a switch to beat their kids, there would be no more parents. Whether you agree with that or not isn't the issue. It takes place, and everyone says there's at least two sides to every story. In this one, there's probably five.
Yeah, well,
but let's just say, I don't know, Adrian Peterson's, excuse, whatever you want to call it, through his lawyer, Rusty Hardin, is at least plausible. And you just mentioned your experience. My experience is my father used a belt on me to discipline me.
I picked a switch. Hey, my mom, her side of the family comes from Southern roots, and you're absolutely right. I went in the backyard. I can count at least a half a dozen times in my childhood, and it's not nothing above. To me, it was just part of life. Instead of getting the paddle or the slipper or the belt, it was go get a switch. And my mom, man, let me tell you, you definitely did not want to go get a switch and deal with it. But I've literally had that happen to me before. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and I said, my dad, there's no photographic evidence, but if there were back then, if everybody had camera phones,
yeah,
I'm sure there would have been on me. And my dad is gone, and by no means am I trying to disparage his memory, because I will never say my dad beat me, because I don't believe he did.
Hell no.
He felt he was doing it for my own good, and I don't disagree with that. That whole thought process. I don't. So, that said, people saw the photographs and they think Adrian Peterson went too far. I think he went too far. But, look at the legal process here. He got indicted. This is Adrian Peterson. This is a multi-million-dollar athlete. He turned himself in on Saturday. The bail was $15,000. That means Adrian Peterson had to give him $1,500 to walk out of there. My point being, again, if you look at the end game here, what do people want to accomplish? If Adrian Peterson goes through this legal process, the worst that is going to happen to him is he gets on probation as a first-time offender.
And the other thing, too, is he was transparent. He gave the state, he told them, and I know that doesn't mean everything, because crazy people will tell you exactly what they did, too, but there was no effort to deceive, cover up, hide anything. This is what happened. Here it is. And the police came as far as to say, he told us exactly what happened. So it leads you to at least understand that he believed what he was doing was right.
Correct, and that doesn't make it right, and that
it doesn't.
And the people and that's why he was indicted, and he's going to have to understand he can't do this moving forward.
Exactly.
If he does it again, there's going to be significantly more issues. But as of right now, my people who are my question to people who are going overboard and saying he should be banned from the league and this and that. I asked, what is their end game? Because that's what I brought up Charles Barkley's, quote for. What are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to accomplish getting Adrian Peterson barred from the NFL, or you're trying to accomplish trying to stop this in an entire culture? Because it's still going on. So I'm not sure where any of that comes from. But again, just by the nature of the bail, I'm sorry, the authorities themselves don't think this is the most serious crime.
Exactly.
Let's put it that way. They're going to have to deal with over the next coming days and months, because they wouldn't let somebody walk out who paid $1,500. People with DUIs have
higher bond than
have
that.
large exactly.
Yeah, you're absolutely
and I don't
right.
think people understand that.
No, I knew where you were going as soon as you did that, because it does speak to that too as well. You know, the level of charge or true bill or whatever you want to call it there. You know, so and you know what? It's interesting too that they announced it this early in the